It wasn't a loud argument. There were no slamming doors, no shouting. It wasn't the kind of thing you would notice if you passed by. It wasn't until the silence that followed that I realized how much everything had changed. The silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, just like any other night. The rain was tapping gently against the windows, the kind of soothing sound that usually made it easy to forget about the world outside. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The scent of garlic and herbs floated through the air, and for a moment, I felt like everything was normal again. But everything wasn't normal, and I had known that for some time, even if I couldn't admit it to myself. It started small. I remember the first time I noticed it. It was subtle, so subtle that it almost felt like I imagined it. She was texting a lot more, always just a bit too secretive about who she was talking to. She'd smile when I asked about her day, but quickly change the subject, always with a nervous laugh, like she had a secret she couldn't share. Then there was the way she'd sometimes glance at her phone with a strange urgency, like she didn't want me to see something. It wasn't anything obvious, but it was enough to make me uneasy. That's when I should have said something. I should have confronted her, but I didn't. I kept thinking it was just my imagination. After all, Sarah had always been a bit of a private person. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was nothing. But then came the night of the party. She told me she was going to meet some friends from work, just a casual get-together. I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't in the mood for a night out, so I stayed home. We both agreed it'd be a good break, a chance to unwind separately. She left in a hurry, dressed in a way I hadn't seen before. It wasn't the outfit, per se. It was the way she was carrying herself. There was an energy to her that I hadn't seen in months. It wasn't just confidence, it was something else. She kissed me goodbye, told me she'd be home late, and then she was gone. And that was the moment I realized how little I actually knew about her life outside of our home. I was alone in the apartment, but the silence wasn't comforting. It felt oppressive, like there was a weight pressing down on me. My mind started racing. I tried to distract myself with TV shows, videos, anything to avoid the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. But then the notifications started. I wasn't looking for anything. I didn't want to snoop. But somehow, I found myself checking my phone more often. It started with a single message from her. Just a quick update. Having fun. Don't wait up. I sighed, trying to ignore the little voice in my head that told me there was more to it than that. But then came the second message, and that's when things took a turn I couldn't ignore. Can't wait to see you again. You're still the one I want. It was the kind of message that made your stomach twist. I stared at it for longer than I should have. It wasn't from Sarah. At least, it wasn't a message for Sarah. It was from someone named Nate. I didn't recognize the name, but something about it felt too familiar, too intimate. I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I felt compelled to look deeper, but I found myself scrolling through the conversation. There were texts from earlier in the evening, flirty comments, shared jokes, and, most concerning of all, a plan to meet up after the party. It was casual, almost playful in tone, but there was an underlying current that I couldn't ignore. It was more than casual. I felt sick. My stomach churned, and my hands began to tremble. I didn't know who this Nate was, but I knew one thing for sure. Sarah was keeping something from me. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to demand answers, to ask why she was texting this guy like they were already more than friends. But I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to make the accusation without proof. And what would I say? Hey, I went through your messages and found this stranger texting you. I tried to push it out of my mind, but I couldn't. It was like the words kept flashing in front of me, over and over. I could feel a knot forming in my chest, one that wouldn't let go. Then, as I sat there, staring at my phone, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Sarah was home. She stepped in, her face flushed from the cold night air, but there was something else in her expression, a flicker of something I couldn't place. Maybe guilt, maybe excitement. It was a look I hadn't seen in her before. Hey, she said, her voice a little too bright. Did you miss me? I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, looking at her. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. My throat felt dry, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. I was overwhelmed with the need to ask, to demand an explanation. But I held back. I didn't want to confront her based on nothing more than a text message, no matter how damning it seemed. Instead, I smiled and tried to keep my voice steady. How was the party? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. It was great, she replied, brushing past me into the kitchen. Lots of fun. A few of the guys from work were there. I froze. The guys from work? She hadn't mentioned him. Nate. It felt like a game now, like we were both pretending that everything was normal, while underneath, everything was crumbling. But I didn't know it yet. This was just the calm before the storm. The storm that was coming was going to change everything. And I had no idea how badly it was about to hurt. The air in the apartment felt thicker when she walked in. Sarah was home, but something about the way she moved, the way she avoided my gaze, made me feel like we were strangers. The door closed softly behind her, and she tossed her jacket on the couch. The smell of alcohol lingered faintly on her clothes. My mind raced back to the text, the messages from someone named Nate. She smiled when she saw me standing there, but it was a little too forced, a little too wide. "Did you miss me?" she asked, her voice overly cheerful. I nodded, even though my stomach was a mess. "Yeah, I did. How was the party?" She paused for a second, looking at me. "It was great. You know, the usual. Some of the guys from work were there. Just a chill night." "Yeah, you mentioned that," I replied, watching her carefully. She still hadn't said anything about Nate. She walked past me, heading toward the kitchen, and I followed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you have fun?" She turned on the sink, her back to me as she washed her hands. "Yeah, it was nice to see everyone outside of work. You know, a chance to just let loose." Her answer didn't sit right with me. There was an edge to it that didn't feel genuine. I watched her for a moment, trying to read her expression, but her face remained unreadable. Then, she quickly changed the subject. "Have you eaten?" "I brought home some leftovers," she said, opening the fridge. "You must be starving." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her everything that had been eating at me, the texts, the way she acted, the fact that Nate hadn't just been a name in the message, but someone she was clearly close to. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, trying to keep my thoughts together. "No, I'm good," I said, trying to play it cool. For a while, we both avoided talking about anything important. She ate her leftovers, and I pretended to watch TV, but my mind was a storm. I couldn't stop thinking about those messages. I couldn't stop thinking about Nate. Around 1 a.m., she started to yawn, stretching as she stood up from the couch. "I think I'm going to bed," she said. "Long night." "Okay," I said, forcing myself to smile. "Good night." She didn't kiss me goodnight, which was strange. We always did that, even when we'd just gotten home. But tonight, she simply turned and walked into the bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts and that gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. I tried to sleep. I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words on the screen again. "Can't wait to see you again. You're still the one I want." I couldn't get rid of it. The more I thought about it, the more my mind raced, and eventually, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know what was going on. I had to find out who Nate was. I quietly got up from the couch, making sure not to wake her. I grabbed my phone and walked over to the kitchen table, my heart pounding. I opened the messages from Nate again, but this time, I wasn't going to stop at just reading. I was going to dig deeper. I searched for his number. It didn't take long for me to find it. There it was, under Nate in her contacts. I clicked on it, but then I froze. The last thing I wanted to do was invade her privacy, but I couldn't stop myself. The message history opened up, and the words hit me like a punch to the gut. The messages went back months. They were filled with jokes, flirty comments, and some of the most intimate exchanges I'd ever seen. There were pictures too, ones I'd never seen before. My head was spinning. I had to stop. I knew it was wrong to be going through her things, but I couldn't look away. What was happening? How long had this been going on? What was I missing? I clicked on one last message from just a few days ago. "You looked amazing last night. I couldn't stop thinking about you." And then, just below it, a reply from Sarah. "I think about you too. Can't wait to see you again soon." I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my chest. This wasn't just a flirtation. It was real. Something was happening, something I wasn't a part of, something that had been going on for a long time. I had to confront her. I couldn't let this go. But as I closed the phone and walked toward the bedroom, I knew that nothing was going to be the same after this. I stood at the edge of the bedroom door, my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah was already in bed, her back turned to me, the covers pulled up high. She looked so peaceful, so unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I couldn't stop thinking about those messages, the intimacy between her and Nate. Every word felt like a slap in the face. Can't wait to see you again. What did that even mean? Was this something that had been going on for months? How could she hide it so well? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my nerves. I should have just woken her up. I should have demanded answers right then and there, but something kept me frozen. My mind raced, trying to come up with a way to approach this, some way to not completely shatter everything we had built. I quietly walked into the room and sat on the edge of the bed. The rustling of the sheets made her stir, but she didn't wake up. I glanced over at her, so calm, so unaware. It made me sick. The woman I had married, the woman I trusted, was keeping something from me, and I had to find out what. Finally, I took a deep breath. I couldn't wait any longer. Sarah, I said quietly, my voice a little too shaky. She didn't respond. I said her name again, louder this time. Sarah, wake up. Her eyes fluttered open, and she blinked a few times before turning her head toward me. What is it? She asked, her voice thick with sleep. I need to talk to you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's important. She shifted, propping herself up on her elbows. What's wrong? Her voice sounded almost too calm, as if she had already known this was coming. I didn't waste any time. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Who is Nate? I asked, staring directly at her. The moment the words left my mouth, her face changed. I saw a flicker of something, guilt, maybe, cross her face, but it was gone before I could process it. She paused, her lips parting, then quickly closed again. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she finally spoke, but her voice had a defensive edge to it. Nate, what are you talking about? I saw the messages, Sarah, I said, holding up my phone, the screen glowing in the dim light. I know about the texts, the pictures. I know everything. Her eyes widened for a split second, and then she sat up fully, pulling the covers around her. She didn't look at me, her eyes fixed on some point in the distance. Devon, she trailed off, her voice shaking now. I couldn't let her deflect. I couldn't let her keep lying to me. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice harsh, though I could hear the pain in it. I've been seeing the signs for weeks. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, and now this. How long has this been going on, Sarah? She didn't answer immediately. The silence between us grew thick, almost suffocating. She wasn't looking at me, but I could see her shoulders tense. Then, slowly, she turned her gaze to me. Her eyes were wide, and there was something in them. Fear, maybe? Regret? I didn't mean for it to happen, Devon, she whispered, almost too softly for me to hear. My heart dropped. You didn't mean for it to happen? Then what happened, Sarah? What exactly did happen? She hesitated, her lips trembling as she searched for words. It was a mistake. But I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted you to find out. I stared at her, numb. I had so many questions, but for a moment, I couldn't form a single one. A mistake, I repeated, barely able to comprehend what she was saying. And Nate? What's his role in this mistake? Her eyes dropped to the bed, avoiding mine. He's someone from work, she said softly. We've been talking. It started innocently, but it got out of hand. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Out of hand, I repeated, my voice rising. Sarah, you've been texting him like this for months, and you call it getting out of hand? Do you realize how much this hurts? Tears welled up in her eyes, and she wiped them away quickly, but it didn't stop the tremor in her voice. I'm sorry, Devon. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen, but I couldn't stop. I felt like the room was spinning, my chest tightening with every word she spoke. I couldn't believe it, couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that she had been hiding this from me, lying to my face for who knows how long. You couldn't stop? I whispered, barely able to speak. You couldn't stop talking to him? Couldn't stop sending him those messages? How long has this been going on, Sarah? How many times did I ask you about it, and you lied to me? Her head dropped, and she whispered, It's been going on for 6 months. 6 months. 6 months of lies, of hidden messages, of betrayal. I didn't know what to say. The words were stuck in my throat. All I could think was that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, had been living a secret life, and I had been completely blind to it. The silence that followed her confession was deafening. I sat there, completely frozen, as the weight of her words settled over me. 6 months. 6 months of deception, lies, and secrecy. 6 months of pretending like everything was fine while I had been living in the dark. I couldn't process it. I kept staring at her, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. The woman I had trusted, The woman I had built my life with was nothing like I had thought. It felt like the world had shifted under my feet, and I was falling into an abyss. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room, trying to gather my thoughts. The anger started to build in me, but it wasn't just anger. It was confusion, hurt, and betrayal all tangled together. How could you do this to me? I asked, my voice shaking. How could you lie to me for 6 months, Sarah? She didn't answer right away, but I saw her body tense as I spoke. I don't know, she whispered. It just happened, Devon. It wasn't planned. It was stupid. Stupid, I repeated, the bitterness in my voice rising. It's not stupid, Sarah. This is a betrayal. You've been hiding this from me for months. And you're calling it stupid? Her eyes welled up with tears again, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not now. Not after everything. I never meant for it to get this far, she said softly. It was just harmless at first, I swear. Just some texts, some flirtation. But then I started getting attached, and I couldn't stop. I didn't know how to get out of it. I could feel my chest tighten as she spoke. You didn't know how to get out of it? So you just kept lying to me? For months? You let it happen. I didn't know how to stop. Devon, she pleaded. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. But I couldn't stop what was happening between me and Nate. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. Her words hit me like a punch. Emotional? I whispered. You've been emotionally involved with him? She nodded, her voice cracking. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you. But I couldn't stop myself from getting closer to him. And now I regret it. I'm so sorry, Devon. I don't know how to make it right. The apology felt hollow. She was sorry, but for what? For getting caught? Or for actually betraying me? I turned away from her, running a hand through my hair. This is unbelievable. I don't know what to say. I don't know who you are anymore. Please don't say that, she said, her voice desperate now. I'm still the same person. I made a mistake, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. I swear it doesn't. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she say she still loved me after everything? After everything she'd done behind my back? I don't know if I can believe you. I muttered, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. How am I supposed to trust you again after this? How am I supposed to look at you the same way? She reached out, her hand trembling, but I took a step back. I can't, Sarah. I need time. I need space to think. The silence stretched between us again, and this time it wasn't just deafening, it was suffocating. I turned and walked out of the room, not knowing where I was going. I just needed to get away, to clear my head. I stepped into the living room and collapsed onto the couch, my mind spinning. What was I supposed to do now? Was this something we could come back from? Was our entire relationship just a lie? I didn't have answers. Not yet. All I had was the broken pieces of a life I thought I understood. And the more I thought about it, the harder it was to breathe. The night felt endless. I couldn't escape the sound of my own thoughts, each one louder than the last, suffocating me. Sarah was still in the bedroom, her sobs echoing through the walls, but it felt like I was miles away from her. We had shared so many quiet nights like this before, but tonight, everything had changed. I sat in the living room, my hands trembling as I ran them through my hair. The phone was still in my hand, the same messages from Nate glowing on the screen. Can't wait to see you again. You're still the one I want. The words burned in my mind, replaying over and over. I kept thinking about everything she had said. She didn't mean for it to happen. It was just some harmless flirtation that got out of hand. But was that true? Could something so deep, so personal, really start off as nothing? I stood up, pacing back and forth, trying to work through the storm in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she'd looked at me when she admitted what she'd done. There was guilt, yes, but was it real? Or was it just the guilt of getting caught? My mind raced, but every conclusion I came to felt incomplete. I wanted to scream. I wanted answers, but all I had was the cold, brutal truth. My wife had been lying to me. She had been living a double life, and I had no idea how to move forward from this. I thought about calling my best friend, Ryan. He'd been through a rough patch with his girlfriend before, but even then, I didn't think he could understand what I was feeling. How could anyone? This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about losing a part of myself. I glanced at the bedroom door, the faint sound of Sarah's cries still drifting into the living room. I should go back in there. I should talk to her, try to make sense of everything. But what was there to say? She had already admitted it. I already knew. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to face her. I needed more time. I turned back to the couch, collapsing into it, my phone still in my hand. I stared at the screen again, unable to look away from Nate's words. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about how he had become someone important to Sarah, someone she was willing to betray me for. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the emotional connection. It was the intimacy she'd shared with him, something she should have shared with me. It felt like a hole had opened up inside me, and no amount of thinking could fill it. I leaned back, closing my eyes. I wanted to sleep, to forget about everything. But I knew that when I opened my eyes again, nothing would be the same. I couldn't go back to the way things were. Sarah's betrayal had shattered something inside of me, and no matter how much I wanted to pretend it hadn't, I couldn't ignore the reality. It wasn't just about trust anymore. It was about who I had become. The man I was before seemed like a stranger now. It was 3 a.m. before I even considered going back into the bedroom. The house was eerily quiet, the only sound the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I hadn't moved much in the last few hours, too caught up in the chaos of my mind to do anything productive. I couldn't stop replaying the night, over and over again, like a broken record. Each time the images in my head grew sharper, Sarah's voice, her face, her words. I couldn't stand the thought of facing her again. But I had to. I stood up from the couch, taking a deep breath before slowly walking down the dark hallway toward our bedroom. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the weight of everything that had happened in the past few hours was pulling me down. When I reached the door, I paused. I didn't know what I expected to find when I walked in, but I was sure it wasn't the sight that greeted me. Sarah was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands. Her body was shaking with quiet sobs, and I felt a pang in my chest. For a moment, I almost wanted to go to her, to hold her, to pretend that everything could go back to the way it was. But the rational part of me, the part that had been slowly waking up all night, reminded me that things were broken beyond repair. The trust was gone. She had broken it. I cleared my throat, my voice thick with emotion. Sarah. She looked up at me, her face a mixture of fear and guilt. Devon, I didn't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right. I'm so sorry. I swallowed hard, the words I had prepared fading into nothing. How long have you been lying to me? How long did you think you could keep this secret? She shook her head, tears still streaming down her face. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I didn't plan any of this. I laughed bitterly, though it felt more like a sob than anything else. You didn't plan it? Really? You didn't plan it when you were texting him every night? You didn't plan it when you decided to meet him in secret? How long have you been seeing him behind my back, Sarah? I swear it didn't start like that, she pleaded. At first, it was just talking. He was there for me when I needed someone to talk to. You were always busy, and I didn't want to bother you with my problems. But then it spiraled. I took a step back, running a hand through my hair. And you think that's an excuse? You think that's enough for me to just forgive you? You've been lying to me, Sarah, for months. You've been emotionally involved with another man while I've been sitting here, thinking everything was fine. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading, but there was no way to fix this. Not anymore. Not after what I had seen, not after everything that had been revealed. I'm sorry, she whispered again. But this time, I could hear the hopelessness in her voice. She knew it, too. She knew that sorry wasn't enough. Not anymore. I turned away from her, my heart breaking with every step I took. I needed space. I needed time. I couldn't even look at her anymore. I walked out of the bedroom and down the stairs, not knowing where I was going or what I was going to do next. All I knew was that everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Sarah, was a lie, and the weight of that lie felt like 1,000 pounds on my chest. I stepped into the living room, collapsing onto the couch, my body exhausted but my mind still racing. How did I get here? How did it all go so wrong? The questions had no answers. The hurt had no resolution. And all I was left with was a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, wondering how I could ever look at her the same way again. The next morning, everything felt wrong. The house was too quiet, too still. There was no comfort in the familiar. I dragged myself out of bed, my head still pounding from the lack of sleep. It wasn't just the exhaustion. It was the weight of everything that had happened. I hadn't slept a wink after the confrontation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the person I thought I knew wasn't who she was anymore. Sarah hadn't come downstairs. The silence between us was palpable, like a heavy curtain hanging between us. I should have said something, anything, but I didn't. I couldn't. I moved mechanically, going through the motions. I made coffee, but it didn't taste right. I went outside for a quick breath of fresh air, but the air felt thick with tension. Every time I tried to focus on something else, my thoughts snapped back to Sarah, to Nate, to everything I had learned. I wasn't ready to face her, but I knew I couldn't keep running from it. Around noon, I finally heard footsteps upstairs. Sarah had come down, but she didn't come into the kitchen. She stayed by the staircase, standing there, unsure of what to do next. I could see her hesitating, like she was waiting for me to make the first move. But I didn't. I couldn't. The words that had been swirling in my head all night, "How could you?" felt too raw to speak. I didn't trust myself to say them without falling apart. She spoke first, her voice quiet. "Devon, I don't know how to fix this. I'm so sorry." Her apology felt empty. How could sorry ever make this right? How could anything make this right? I took a deep breath, my voice sharp. "Sorry doesn't fix this, Sarah. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what you did." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was wrong. I never meant to hurt you, but I did. And I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what to do." I turned to face her. "You did hurt me. And it's not just about the affair. It's everything. Everything you kept from me. The lies. The secret life you were living while I was right here, believing in us." She looked like she was about to say something, but I raised my hand, stopping her. I couldn't hear more empty excuses. I wasn't sure what I needed to hear anymore. Nothing felt real. "Do you even understand what this does to me?" I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. "How am I supposed to trust you again? How am I supposed to believe anything you say after everything you've done?" She didn't have an answer. There was no magic phrase to make it better. There was no way to undo the damage. I turned away from her, trying to steady my breathing. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't breathe straight. "I need some space," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded silently, her face full of regret. And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, I walked away. The weight of her eyes on my back, the silence between us, it was all too much. And as I stepped outside into the fresh air, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. Days passed, and the silence between Sarah and me was suffocating. I spent my time away from the house, trying to sort through my feelings, but the truth was, I didn't know how to move forward. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. But somewhere, deep down, I knew I couldn't just walk away from everything we had. I had loved her for so long, and despite the pain, despite the betrayal, I couldn't give up on her. I couldn't give up on us, at least not yet. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. There were moments when I wanted to scream, when I wanted to push her away, but I kept reminding myself that this wasn't just her fault. I had missed the signs too. I had been so caught up in the daily grind that I didn't notice the distance between us growing. It was both of us, in different ways, losing touch. I asked for space. She gave it to me. We spent the next few days apart, no texts, no calls. It was like we were both figuring out if this was worth saving. But when I returned home one evening, I found her waiting for me in the living room. Her eyes were red, but there was something different about her, something genuine. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about everything. About us. And I know I can't undo what I've done. I can't make it right with words, but I want to try. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I want to show you that I'm willing to work for it. For us." The sincerity in her voice cut through the fog of anger and hurt that had clouded my judgment. I didn't know if I could forgive her right then, but I was willing to try. We both were. We spent weeks rebuilding, slowly but surely. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't easy. We went to therapy, we had hard conversations, and we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable with each other in a way we never had before. I learned things about her that I didn't know, and she learned things about me that I had kept hidden. It wasn't just about repairing trust. It was about rediscovering who we were together. And then, one day, Sarah turned to me and said, "I know it's not perfect, but I want this. I want us. I want to make this work. I love you." The words hit me in a way I hadn't expected. I realized that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, even after the hardest moments. That night, we sat together on the couch, no longer strangers to each other, but partners trying to move forward. And in that moment, I knew that no matter how broken things had been, we had the chance to rebuild something stronger. It wasn't an easy journey, and there were still days of doubt, days when the past threatened to creep back in. But we were willing to fight for it, for the love we had once shared. for the trust we could rebuild. And with time, we found our way back to each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And sometimes, that's enough.